And this is why I propose to anchor in CBC Radio-Canada's mandate its role in helping the Canadian population fight against disinformation and understand fact-based information.
Hey, while I got you, I want to talk about, there's just little implosions every day from this illegitimate government. I say illegitimate because it has no mandate, because it's hiding from a non-confidence vote. Trudeau is the lamest of lame ducks. But let me read from your latest press release, Franco. It's by our friend Chris Sims, who works with you. She's wonderful. CBC doesn't deserve more money from taxpayers. Let me just read the headline. Minister recommends nearly doubling CBC funding and reducing CBC accountability. Now, this is where it gets scary. It's one thing to slosh more money at them, but you guys have decoded that they're doing it in a way to make it hard for a future Poilievre government, if he were to win, to claw this back. Tell me about that.
CBC does not belong to the Liberals, it does not belong to the Conservatives, and it does not belong to any other political parties. It belongs to the Canadian people. And this is why, to be able to give CBC Radio-Canada the means to fulfill its mandate, I propose that it be financed directly in the legislation instead of in the budget through statutory appropriation. Statutory appropriation should be based on the demographic reality. And I mean by that a per capita funding based formula. The average funding for a public broadcaster in a G7 country is $62 per person per year. In Canada, we're second to last, with $33 per year per person. We're closer to the United States than to any other country of the G7 country. And I don't think that we want the United States to be our reference. I think we need to aim closer to the middle ground, which is $62 per year per person. With predictable, stable funding based on a per capita formula, there's no reason why people would need to pay to be subscribed to one or the other platforms of the CBC. And this is why that with this change in how the public broadcaster is being financially supported, I'm also proposing that all platforms be made free and accessible to all Canadians who shouldn't have to pay twice for the service. The advertising or the search for advertising revenue is incompatible with the information mission of the CBC Radio-Canada. And by giving it a sustainable and predictable public funding, I'm proposing that there is no longer any advertisement on anything related to news or public affairs on any of the platforms of the CBC, whether it's television, radio, or online platforms. This would also free up advertisement dollars for the private sector.
Well, what they're really doing is ducking accountability, right? So how the government essentially funds these different crown corporations is you have a normal budget process, right? You budget, and then politicians or elected representatives are supposed to vote yay or nay, right? That's why we pay these politicians so much money, too much money, to vote yes or no on spending. But what the minister is proposing is to remove the CBC's funding from the normal budget process, to put it into law and essentially just guarantee the CBC gets a certain amount of funding every single year. Okay, completely ducking accountability. It's really quite gross. Now, the other part that really makes my stomach turn is, look, we just had, a year and a half, 2 years of huge criticism. Public criticism of how the CBCs are wasting our money. And did the minister listen? No. What did the government come up with? Well, let's nearly double the cost of the CBC to taxpayers, okay? What Minister St. Ange is recommending here would nearly double the cost of the CBC to about $2.5 billion every single year. $2.5 billion a year. Ezra, let's just put that into perspective, okay? That money would cover the annual grocery bill for like 150,000 Canadian families.
Yeah. You know, I'm so jealous of this DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, that Elon Musk and his group of young geniuses, as Trump calls them, are doing. Every day they're finding billions of dollars in waste and just cutting it with the full support of the president. I'm watching that down in the States. I'm watching the private sector investment. like the head of SoftBank or the Japanese prime minister saying they're going to invest hundreds of billions, even $1 trillion in America. Trump's not using taxpayers' money for these investments. Private companies and foreigners are doing it. He's cutting tax. We are doing the exact opposite. In the two stories we've talked about today, Trudeau is, quote, investing our taxpayers' money. That's not an investment. And then he's spending it on the CBC. Let me play a clip for you of Pascal Saint-Onge saying what this is really about, Franco. It's not about journalism. It's about propaganda. Here she is saying it's about fighting, quote, disinformation. Take a look.
Enshrined in law, the role that CBC Radio-Canada plays in the fight against disinformation to support the public, especially in the current context. And this refers directly to some of the recommendations that were made by the Foreign Interference Commission, which repeated how important it is that Canadians can rely on Canadian sources of information to be more resilient and to understand the patterns that other countries use to disseminate propaganda or disinformation to influence how we live together and our political context. And this is why I propose to anchor in CBC Radio-Canada's mandate its role in helping the Canadian population fight against disinformation and understand fact-based information.
These are the worst of days. You'd think there would be some sense of, some self-consciousness by the government that they have no more democratic mandate. They're on borrowed time, but it's sort of like they know the party is over at midnight and they're just going around drinking every bottle of booze, racking up the credit card, trashing the house. They know the party's going to be over extremely soon. And instead of showing any sense of responsibility, they're just saying, have a total blowout, trash the hotel room like a rock star, and leave the bill for someone else. It really feels like the last days of Rome, and this is Caligula or Nero or something.
Well, the good news, though, is that I think Canadians are just sick and tired, right? Sick and tired of the tax hikes, sick and tired of the government wasting our money. I mean, look, another thing that the CBC today, the minister, I should say, didn't even mention was the CBC bonuses, right? Almost like everyone in the House of Commons agrees that the CBC bonuses are so out of hand. In fact, 70% of Canadians disagree with the CBC's taxpayer-funded bonuses, and yet not a mention of it. Like, this is what is getting so crazy. You know what I mean? And just to kind of go back to what's going on with Canada and the United States, look, I think people should be worried about a potential tariff war, okay? Tariffs are just taxes. But guess what? While Mr. Trump is musing about a 25% tariff, Trudeau and the government is still set to increase the carbon tax on Canadians by nearly 20% on April 1.
Great point. He's going to do more damage on April 1st than Trump's threats would do if he followed through with them. You're exactly right. Well, Franco, let me close. As I said before, when we first talked about Doge, if, God willing, there's a change in government later this year, I certainly hope that our country engages in the same kind of deep forensic accountability on all our spending. And in the States, it's being led by Elon Musk, who I don't think knows government that well, but he knows tech and systems, and he's got a great team of activists. And I've been trying to think, who would that be in Canada? Do we have an Elon Musk type character? I don't think we do. But what we do have are a group of independent, nonpartisan people who do not take government money and whose entire raison d'etre is finding waste. And they happen to be called the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. I think I'm looking at someone who, God willing, would be invited to do a short tour of duty, not to join the government, because I know you couldn't stand for that. That would be like oil and water. But a 1-year tour of duty to dive deep into the dungeons of government, into the bowels of government, the stalactites and the stalagmites and the caves of government, and cut billions of dollars of spending, and you would be left with the thanks of a grateful nation. Franco, you're the man.
Well, you know what, Ezra? The homework is done. Now we just need to find some politicians with the will and spine to do the right thing and cut.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.